Welcome to the pilot episode of the Soulset Rising podcast that I definitely can say I have dragged my feet on doing and surrendered to this excellent man right here who has worn me down. And I would say that over the years, we've done a fair amount of that to each other. So here we are. This is Steve Frazier. He is a certified self-sabotage coach. I am Alex Hardinger. I am the owner of Symmetry Natural Health and Soulset Rising, which is an online mindset community for women around personal growth and self-sabotage and emotions. And we are going to talk about an interesting topic today. So just really excited to kind of jam out on some of these things and what we've learned over the years. We've been on this kind of growth journey together through health, emotions, figuring out self-sabotage, figuring out a lot of things over the years. So I get to call this guy Dad. And so I'm going to the whole time. And you're welcome to call him that too.
Yep. I answer to that.
He's definitely grandpa to lots of people. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your background in self-sabotage coaching?
Okay.
And then we'll get into some of the questions.
Okay. I started my journey in self-sabotage about 2.5 years ago. And I had been following a gentleman named Jason Christoff, who has a class on self-sabotage, and he certifies coaches. And I was very interested in it. And I was in the class for about 1.5 years. I actually went through 2 sessions. So I got double duty. And in that process, he talks about the 4 pillars of self-sabotage, of your strengths, which are ways that you can self-sabotage yourself. And it's physical and mental, emotional, and financial, and spiritual. And I found that, and through Jason's guidance, that the physical one probably is the basis for all the other ones, because if you're healthy, you can do just about anything. If you're not healthy, all you do is think about your health.
Nothing else matters at that point.
That's right, it doesn't. Mm-hmm. And so as I've gone through the different sections in the health pillar, which as I say them, you'll understand where I'm coming from. Alcohol is a great way to self-sabotage, nicotine, regular drugs, prescription drugs, overeating, but the one that I found most unique was caffeine. And because I believe that it has the most impact on the lives of everyday Americans than any of the other things in that, controllable things in that pillar.
Well, and I know Jason Christoff's work is a lot around the subconscious mind and how they've programmed. And so a belief is just a thought you keep thinking. And so coffee is everywhere. And you look back in movies and you see Starbucks cups and you look everywhere and it's so normalized.
Yep.
It's the drug of choice for Americans, right?
It is. If you look at the Fight Club movie as an example, he made an effort, the director, to put a Starbucks coffee cup in every scene. And you can go on YouTube and you can look at the compilations. It's quite interesting. But there's, just in my own personal experience, and I don't watch a lot of TV anymore, but NCIS is an example with Gibbs. If you know Gibbs, he's been around for 20 years. Coffee, lives on coffee, always has coffee. And that's the norm. And so we've been programmed. And so when I do my presentation on Release the Coffee Cuffs, I start out with a 28-second commercial for Folgers. And the best thing of waking up is Folgers in your cup. And what it does is it actually releases dopamine, and you get a buzz just by watching that commercial.
I got it just from you talking about it.
Right, that's right.
I can smell it.
Yeah, you're right. And when you watch it, and you see, and they have the aroma, things coming up off the coffee, and they're smiling. It's a young couple with a couple kids, and they're in their bedroom, and they're drinking coffee, and they're smiling, and they're all happy. 90% of the dopamine released when you're anticipating something is in the anticipation. It's not when you drink the coffee. Mm-hmm. It's like right now, what she just said, and later on, she has a great anecdotal story about coffee. One of the things that I want to stress when I get into this is that I am not here to try to convince you to quit drinking caffeine, because that's a personal choice. And I can't make you do anything, because we are individuals. We all have free will and free won't. And what I've chosen to have my role is educational, kind of talk to you about what's going on when you drink coffee. And then if you want to not drink caffeine, and you have been for a while, how do you do that and stay off of it? There's all kinds of great reasons to drink coffee. They're all short-term, and they're all just quick fixes. There's no long-term benefits to drinking coffee, in my humble opinion. From my research, short-term gives you a buzz. Absolutely, it does. And long-term, it depletes all kinds of things in your body. And ultimately, it will affect your sleep to the point where you will be crabby all the time.
Well, if we just like peel back the layers of conditioning, right? I mean, as human beings, what does our logic and intuition tell us? It tells us like we need food for fuel, we need to have some water to keep going because we have water. So our body can make water, right? But caffeine or coffee is made with water, but it still dehydrates our body. So it is upsetting balances, but we like the dopamine hits, we like to drink something other than water in a day. We have seen coffee be romanticized, and it's really no different than pharmaceutical companies who say, this is the list of side effects. Well, it's showing you this glorious thing that because this thing might cure I mean, really, it's no different than the Folgers commercials of saying, here you go, here's the drug that's widely accepted, and kind of like alcohol is the only, especially in Wisconsin, like our culture is like, you have to explain why you don't drink if you don't drink, instead of explaining why you do use that as a drug. And again, it's not from a place of judgment. I think our people are people who are curious. And if you have an awareness of something, you can make better decisions. And so if you have an awareness over something, because like I drink caffeine, I consume caffeine. I was off of it for 3 years. I went back on it. I've been back on it for 2.5 years. Ebbs and flows, seasons of life. But I'm very aware of my decisions, and I know kind of where I'm at in a day on things, and I try not to push past the line I've drawn for myself. But most people don't even realize that we're drawing our own lines, right? Like the lines have been drawn for us. And I think that's what you're trying to explain to everybody. Right?
You know, the half-life of a cup of coffee is 3 to 5 hours. So if you drink a cup of coffee past noon or 1 o'clock, and I'm just not just coffee, caffeinated soda, energy drinks, anything with caffeine in it, when you're going to go to bed at night, your adenosine receptors are closed.
And don't want to put you into that parasympathetic state where you can rest and unwind. And we need that. We need to be able to go into that parasympathetic mode because that's where our body recovers and heals and turns over new cells, and you go into that subconscious state. And if you're not all the way down, you're literally affecting the next day.
And a lot of anecdotal stuff. You know, I'm not going to talk about it a lot. I watched a video a couple weeks ago from a major influencer, social media influencer, 800,000 followers on YouTube, and he quit caffeine, and 30 days later he then said he had the best night of sleep that he's had probably in 5 to 10 years and years. And what happens when you sleep? I mean, she's the expert kind of here. Okay, what happens when you sleep?
Yeah, your body completely is able to shut down and restore itself.
Right.
And it heals and recovers.
And if you don't get into that good sleep, whatever you want to call it, you don't recover. And it's a cycle, it's a vicious cycle. So then when you wake up in the morning, what do you do?
Drink coffee.
That's right. Yeah. Good answer. Because that's the only way to start. Now, here's the way to look at this. First thing you do if you get up and you drink a cup of coffee in the morning, you have, first of all, upset the rhythm of your adrenal glands with cortisol. Cortisol is something that you naturally produce in the morning to get you going. It gives you juice. It's a natural energizer, right? So when you drink coffee, first thing in the morning, you bump that up, you double it, you triple it, whatever. Okay, so you produce all this cortisol, and then what happens when you run out? You crash. And you know, I talked about this anecdotal story, and I'm going to fast forward to that right now because Alex told me this story last week, because when we were talking about doing this, you know, she smiled. She said, well, I drink caffeine. I said, that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
But do you remember the story?
Oh,
So please share this because this is quite interesting.
Also, I think you should never shy away from sharing anecdotal stories because, you know, when I was learning science as a kid, it was fiat, and 1/5, 20% of science is literally observation, which you do not need to be a scientist to do. You just observe, and stories are the best way to talk to people because this is a different experience, and people really do metabolize caffeine differently.
Absolutely.
And so for some people, this is a bigger deal than others. So I like to. I was gonna save some of my caffeine for later in the day because I wanted that hit a little later.
Pause. She is now negotiating with her drug of choice. You realize that she is negotiating with the drug of choice.
Absolutely, and I'm the queen of justification.
That's right.
Everybody knows that. And I was justifying having caffeine later so that I wouldn't make other poor choices with food, which again is just a cut off your nose to spite your face type of thing. But I was gonna consume caffeine later in the day, so I decided to wait on it because I kind of give myself a limit, like I'm not gonna tell you what it is. And so I woke up and I drank some water, and I do that every day. And then I drank some electrolytes, and then I had a caffeine-free Zevia because that would be my other little vice. I love Zevia. And next thing you know, it was 1 o'clock in the afternoon and I hadn't had any caffeine. And guess what I did have? Oh, an headache. Yeah. Right. And then I was I kind of needed the caffeine. Then you can really justify it because when you were in any sort. Why do we make these choices? Subconsciously, we make these choices because we're in some kind of pain and we're trying to sedate ourselves from our real lives. And so that's just another awareness piece, right? If you're using food as a drug, your phone as a drug, caffeine as a drug. We're just talking about caffeine today. Any of those drugs of choice are still being used to sedate yourself from your real life.
Yep.
And that's not coming from a place of judgment. We all do it.
Yep.
But it is very powerful to have an awareness around it.
So what did you do then at 1 o'clock?
Drink a bunch of caffeine.
And how'd you feel?
Great.
It's amazing. It is amazing what drugs will do for you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, and I'll share one short anecdotal story of myself. And this is 12, 14 years ago. I was drinking caffeine regularly, and I was traveling on a Sunday, and I was driving to Milwaukee from Wausau, Wisconsin. So I had about a 3-hour drive, and I had coffee, in the car with me. I got about 45 minutes on the road, and all of a sudden, I have heart palpitations. Okay, and they're called PVCs, premature ventricular contractions. And I had them on and off, but this one was bad. I stopped. I turned around. I called my wife. I said, I'm coming home. I'll be home in 45 minutes. I want to get in the car with you, and I want you to take me to the emergency room. So we get in the car. I'm not dead. So we get in the car. We go to the emergency room. I explain to them what's going on. They strap me up to an EKG machine, and I've got a couple nurses with me, and then the doctor comes in. We chat, and we look at the EKG. It's live now, and I'm having them, and I can see them on the EKG. I can see the PVCs on the EKG. And I looked at the doctor, and I said, so what's happening here? He said, well, everybody gets these. You just happen to be particularly sensitive to them, and so you can feel them more than everybody else. And I said, so why am I having these? He said, well, a lot of them is caused by stress. And then he looked at me, little twinkle in his eye, and he said, and caffeine. And the only time that I've ever had them since then is when I have had caffeine. Otherwise, I don't have them. I try to limit my stress like everyone else, but we all have it. But I have the ability to control this. I have control because we all have free will and free won't. And if I choose not to have those PVCs, if I don't drink caffeine, I don't have them. And so, like Alex said just a minute ago, stories are the best way, and especially anecdotal stories are sometimes the best. And if you are watching this and you want to share an anecdotal story with me, please get to me on any social media and share your story. I'm writing a book right now called Release the Coffee Cuffs, Winning the Battle with Caffeine. And there's going to be a chapter just on anecdotal stories. And why is that? Is because people always think that they're the only one. Alex, when she was there at 1 o'clock, she's thinking to herself, this is just me. No, but this doesn't happen to anybody else. This happens to everybody. Okay.
Yeah, and if it's, because I think there's going to be people, maybe who didn't get this far, but there's people who are like, this doesn't happen to me. Nothing bad happens when I eat gluten. Nothing bad happens when I drink coffee. Nothing bad happens to me when I drink alcohol. And I think a story that I like to tell in my practice is that if you move into a house that has a railroad track in the backyard and the train comes through in the middle of the night and blows its horn right in your backyard, it is going to wake you up out of a dead sleep that first night. And the second night is still going to wake you up. And after a week, it is still going to wake you up. But after a month or two, you are going to sleep right through that train horn. And if you start ignoring the signals that your body is sending you, they will become just like that train horn. And so people who have been eating garbage or drinking caffeine for a long, long time, their bodies are literally deadened to these symptoms. And so once you create an awareness around it, like say maybe slow down on the caffeine consumption, then all of a sudden you can notice something when it goes back in. Now, part of that's just because your system's not used to it, like
Right.
It's not always necessarily a good or bad thing, but it's interesting, right?
Yes. Yep. So again, I'm not here to tell you what to do. I am here, and now in a minute or two, we're going to talk about why did I do this and what's going on.
That's my prompt to ask him that question. But I'm just looking at my questions here, and I'm like, there's some really interesting ones that I think will take us down that path.
Yep.
So let's get into like some of the mindset stuff around it, because the caffeine is interesting, but that's like, oh man, it's a hard pill to swallow. So let's talk about the difference between self-sabotage and discipline when you're making choices. And then let's bring it back around to the coffee.
Okay. So when you self-sabotage, it's things that you do to undermine your morals and values. Okay, so if you have a value of being healthy, what do you have in your tool shed, your self-sabotage tool shed, to undermine that? Okay, could be you go out and get hammered. You go out and have a dozen beers, a couple shots.
Ruin your whole weekend about it.
Throw in a couple Jaeger bombs to boot, because that will really get you going.
Uppers,
downers.
downers.
Yeah, all at the same time, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, now you know that this is bad for you, but you do it anyway, because one, you're doing it with your partner or your friends or your family, and it's socially acceptable. So as we talk about the self-sabotage aspect, we all do this. So there's no free pass for anyone. Everybody self-sabotages. What discipline is, and discipline is a virtue. I consider it a virtue.
Yeah.
Do you have the discipline to listen to someone like me or Alex and talk about, what is this really doing to me? And why should I stop? And so first thing about self-sabotage, you have to recognize it, right? 95 to 98% of everything we do every day is controlled by our subconscious mind.
Yeah, by the time we're 35, it's like really, it's so hard to change your mind. It's hard to change your habits. Your subconscious is like so implanted by then.
And so what you do is, if you've watched your parents as you grew up, the first thing they did was have a cup of coffee. Your subconscious has now been programmed that is what you should do.
And can you just explain a little bit about why your subconscious, which we think of as this thing that should serve us, why is it making us do shitty things?
Because it's you're being part of the herd. You're doing what is socially acceptable.
Because it's safer to be in the herd.
It is absolutely safer.
It is, because if you're out on your own, you might get eaten by a bear.
That's right.
But if you are loved and accepted by the herd, someone will protect you.
Yep.
That's what our subconscious brain says. It's just trying to keep us like, well, it's really dangerous out there. We better not change. So known misery is safer to the subconscious than a choice in the right direction because it's unknown.
That might cause some pain because when you make change, it's painful. Yeah. We talk about, there's a book called Who Moved My Cheese? It's about change. And it's about two mice and two little men, right? 45-minute read. One of the best things you can ever do if you're thinking about doing some of these things. Change is going to happen whether you like it or not. Are you in control of it? And the people that embrace change and control it are the winners. Mm-hmm. And the people that sit and wait for it and then are snowballed by it, they're the ones that don't deal well with it.
Absolutely.
Okay.
It's that whole personal responsibility and taking control for your own choices.
Right.
And most people, it's not that they don't want that. It's that most people, I think, that are not maybe pausing long enough to check in with their higher self to ask, intuitively, is this a good choice? I would argue that if you sat down in front of a plate of steak and salad and, some fresh spring water and you look at it and you enjoy it mindfully and chew it and are thankful while you're eating it and how healthy that is, and then you put down a piece of pizza and chocolate cake and you really, really, really check in with yourself, you already know that that's not good for you.
Right.
And so I think that kind of one of my markers for myself over the years with caffeine has been, it is a drug. I like drugs.
Yeah.
So, not all of them, but some. And so I check in with myself and I'd say, okay, am I doing this because I enjoy it and it's adding value to my life, or am I addicted to it? And anytime I'm addicted to something, that is a signal to me, if I have resistance to quitting it, that's exactly what I need to do.
Yep.
I've done it with social media. I've done it with caffeine. I quit alcohol, and I mean, I still say that I drink 2 to 3 drinks a year, but I couldn't tell you the last time I had one.
Right.
Smoking, and it's hard, right? Smoking is a great example because you can decide and you can look at it and say, I intuitively know this is bad for me. It's still really hard to quit. Mm-hmm. But I think this loving, wise adult inside of us, to me, my inner child who wanted control wanted to smoke cigarettes because I could. And then when I grew up, this is my personal experience, when I grew up and was an adult, adults don't do that.
Right.
Because they have to take care of themselves so they can then provide and serve others and set examples.
Yep.
And so we think caffeine is not maybe as extreme as those things, but if you're addicted to it, just like anything else, that's a problem.
Right. What are we facing when we talk about caffeine? Well, it's $1 trillion a year business. That's $1 trillion. It's not $1 billion, not $100 billion, not 200
It's a lot of
billion.
zeros.
That's a lot of zeros. You
Yeah.
know, we could line them up across here. So what are we up against? We're up against all these people that are making all this money and they like it. Do you realize that they add caffeine to soda so you become addicted? There's no health benefit to caffeine. Now, there's some benefits there are some benefits.
There's some
health-wise.
therapeutic
Yeah,
benefits to
correct.
caffeine, just
There
like
are.
nicotine.
Yes.
That's another podcast episode.
Yes, right. Mm-hmm. So what we're looking at that programming, okay? If you look at every commercial, and it's ironic that many of you have no idea that you're drinking caffeine in some of the things you're doing, okay? There's caffeine in, obviously, coffee, tea, you have soda.
Even a lot of the seltzers now.
Yep.
My kids come home with it.
I
and
mean,
I'm
they
like,
have
"That has
caffeine
in
water,
it."
okay?
Yeah.
But then you have chocolate and you have your meds, okay? If you take an Excedrin, if you take 2 or 3 Excedrin, you have two or three cups of coffee in those 3, and that's over the counter. There's a lot of prescription meds that have caffeine in them as well. And so you don't know where it all is, but if you stop, you'll know that you were taking it.
Yeah. Well, and that was kind of bringing me to my next question, because I think one of the biggest check-in factors is if it wasn't an issue at all, it would be really easy to not do it.
Correct.
Right? So why is it so emotionally and physically difficult to quit caffeine?
We'll deal with the physical first, okay?
This is decaf, by the way.
Okay.
He doesn't judge, but, clarifying. Clean decaf.
I wasn't judging her, she was judging herself. Anyway, so that's a defensive move on my daughter's part. So if you look at the physical aspect, when you drink caffeine, it definitely gives you a rush, okay, a buzz, whatever you want to call it. And why is that? It's because it goes in and it shuts down, first of all, it shuts down the adenosine receptors in your brain. And the adenosine receptors are what make you tired at night. And it starts as the cortisol, which we talked about, that starts in the morning, and then throughout your day, your cortisol goes down, down, down. Your body's doing this on its own. Okay, this is amazing, right? But then as you go out through the day and then as you go into the evening, then it starts to create melatonin and the adenosine, which helps you go to sleep. And that's the natural circadian rhythm of your body. So as you become addicted, as you drink more and more caffeine, your body blocks the adenosine receptors, and so you don't get tired. And actually, if you become really heavily addicted to caffeine, your brain actually creates more adenosine receptors.
And you're not getting the buzz, so you drink more now.
And so you got to drink more, and then you got to drink a little more, and then you start drinking. At 3 o'clock in the afternoon, you're done. You're down. Can't function. I need a cup of coffee to
Right,
get me
and
through.
mentally we think we can handle these things, but physiologically there's a lot going on with your adrenal glands and your nervous system behind the scenes here.
Right. So when you quit caffeine, there's two options. You can go cold turkey and you can go slow. And I encourage you to go slow. I've done cold turkey several times, as well as Alex has. I called her up one time about 24 hours after I had quit, and I said, I need something. She said, well, the only thing that I can help you out with probably is water and some ibuprofen. Okay.
I have 400 supplements here.
Yeah. And the supplements aren't going to do it. So what is the biggest answer? What's the biggest relief? Caffeine?
No.
Because what happens when you stop, if that morning you don't have caffeine, by 1 o'clock, maybe even earlier than that, because you realize overnight your body as the half-life's gone down. Then what happens is that when the adenosine receptors open up, because they're not being blocked anymore, you have a major blood flow to your brain. And guess what? You get a massive migraine. And the more addicted you have been, or the more consumption you have, the larger the headache. And that can last anywhere from 12 to 48 to 72 hours, and in some cases, longer. And one of the things Alex mentioned in the beginning is that everything that we talk about here is on an individual basis, because we all process different, and we all have different,
There are literally
body
gene
masses.
SNPs that have to do with how your body methylates prescription drugs, B vitamins, alcohol, caffeine, all of these things. We actually test for them in practice.
So when you do cold turkey, you just drink as much water as you possibly can. Because remember, the more caffeine you've drank in the past, the more dehydrated you become. It's a diuretic. Done deal, scientific. It's not a question thing. Yeah. So physically then I recommend in my book and the program, Release the Coffee Cuffs, is to wean yourself off. Okay, and that is, as an example, the first day that you're going to do this, you brew a pot of coffee and you put 75% regular coffee and 25% decaf. And there's a whole bunch of options, but I'm just using this as a general example. Okay, you drink that pot of coffee for 2 days. Then on the third day, you brew another pot, half regular, half decaf. And do that for 2 or 3 days. Mm-hmm. Then you go to 25% coffee, 75% decaf. You still may have a small headache, but it's not going to be like you did on first day when you went cold turkey.
And I think that it's important, like for me, to say how important it is to have someone like you to coach people through this, because you're giving them the answers, but people won't do it on their own, right?
Right.
Like, we do need our hands held. Like, we do, all of us do. Coaches have coaches.
Yes.
And practitioners have practitioners.
Yeah.
And so the other issue is that as you, like, if you decide for caffeine to be the place that you start with your self-sabotage, inevitably a whole bunch of other self-sabotage that you're doing in your life is going to be like highlighted in your face.
Yep.
And so it's going to become about more than just the caffeine and the coffee, which is why it's even more important to have the right support. And the reality is, for most people, we have to remember that not everybody else is coming from our place of experience or what we're thinking and what's important to us right now. Mm-hmm. And so if you don't have the support like right in your home or with your closest family and friends, it's really, really hard. And then, you hear something like this, there's this phenomena called the presenter's dilemma, where we're so passionate about something, we assume that everybody cares as much as we do. And anybody who's been in any sort of natural health, especially in the last 5 years, can understand this, because it's like, well, once you see it, you can't unsee it, but not everybody's ready to see it. Yep. So having a coach who understands not only the caffeine and the health piece, but then the self-sabotage piece as a bigger picture can help you take that walk.
So there's your physical side. And there's a lot more to that. I'm not going to go any deeper than that. Now you have the emotional side. And this is the subconscious part. And this is the part that is incredibly interesting to me because of my self-sabotage background. And that is that everything we do is by habit. And as you watch this, you can smile to yourself and say, okay.
Not me.
Yeah.
Not me. I'm making my own choices.
That's right.
I'm thinking my own thoughts today.
That's right. So what do you do? First thing, if you go to work and you have the coffee pot, what happens there? You socialize.
Yeah.
What happens when you want to go out with someone in the morning? Let's go have coffee.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's not go have water. Let's not go have herbal tea. Okay. Having coffee. And if you order decaf, you kind of get the stink eye, like that. What are you drinking?
Why would you ruin that drink?
That's right. That's right. Why would you take the caffeine out? So emotionally, it's a habit thing. And my suggestion to you is read a book by James Clear. It's called Atomic Habits. Okay.
Yeah.
And
Great book.
and what it does is it helps you to reprogram your subconscious. He talks about that briefly, but that's what it is. He literally could have named that reprogram your subconscious mind, because it's all habits.
Yeah.
So as an example, when I get up in the morning, the first thing I do, and I've done this for probably 8 years, is I have a 24-ounce bottle of water, which I put apple cider vinegar and Mineral, which is a detox for humic and fulvic acid, and lemon juice. And sometimes I throw a little aloe in there. And because I'm not hardcore, I have to put a little stevia in it because that apple cider vinegar has got a kick. Yeah. Okay. And this is how I start my day. Okay. I hydrate my body. I had blood taken yesterday, routine physical. Lady took my blood. I have a great vein on the back of my hand. Just goes right in, pops right out. She looked at me when she was done and she said, "Boy, you must be really hydrated. I've never heard this before. I'm mature. I'm 68 years old. Never heard this before." I said, "What do you mean?" She said, when I put that needle in you, the blood just started coming out. I filled that tube up so fast. I haven't filled that tube up like that in a year or two, that fast. Mm-hmm. Because I drank that on the way there. I drank that water, and I was hydrated. Mm-hmm. And she said, if I try to take blood out of people that are dehydrated, I can hit a good vein, and sometimes it can take minutes to get a tube. Mm-hmm. She had me filled up in 20 seconds, right? Mm-hmm. So that was a tangent, which like we're really good at.
Yeah, really good.
Yeah, we're good at tangents. So how do we recreate that? Okay, so first thing is wherever you generally have a cup of coffee, at least for a while, you avoid that spot. Mm-hmm. Okay, kitchen table. I mean, the classic picture from 50 years ago was mom or dad sitting at the kitchen table, reading a newspaper, having a cup of coffee and a smoke, right? I mean, you realize I grew up in a time when cigarettes were more than acceptable. In fact, they were encouraged. Which ones are better for you, doctor? They have doctors that prescribe, this is the one you should drink. This is the cigarette that pregnant women should smoke, okay? I have the ads, okay? It's something that we're programmed, right? Again, so what do we do in our program? We teach you how to avoid that. Mm-hmm. We have a number of 7 to 10 different types of journals that you use regularly. And some of you may use them for the rest of your life. Because I quit smoking 39 years ago. When I see somebody with a cigarette, I want to take a drag.
Me too. And it's been 10 years for me.
And it's never going to go away. When somebody blows smoke kind of in my face, I don't look at them with disgust. I say, in here, I say, thank you.
That was great.
That was outstanding.
Love that smell.
Right. So there's these all these cues that were being pushed to that. So every day you have to say to yourself, this is the new habit that I'm going to create. Now, there's all kinds of different time frames that people say, how do you recreate yourself? Some people say you got to do something 7 times. Another person says you got to do something 21 times. We offer hypnotherapy that you do every night, at least for the first 30 days. You do it before you go to bed.
Because what you got to remember is that the subconscious is always recording everything, which is why even if the coffee cup isn't the main thing that's, the main character, it doesn't matter.
Right.
It's there.
Yep.
And our subconscious is recording these things and it's running the show. And most people don't realize that, a belief is just a thought you keep thinking. I'll keep saying that because if somebody tells you something enough times, it does not matter if it's true or not. It becomes a belief. Yep. And we are being completely programmed by not only just like mainstream media, but now social media. And so your algorithm is designed to keep you in the app. And so it's going to show you what will keep you in the app, not what is going to make you a better person.
Right.
And so when we realize that we're comparing ourselves to people who might have a vice that you have and you're now going to use that, and I'm the queen of this, use that vice to justify 6 other bad decisions.
Yep.
And so I like to use this idea that if we lived kind of in the wild, I think of like the wild now to me is like airports and cities. Like that's absolutely wild. Got to be able to survive in there. But in general, like if we just went back to like nature and our core essence of like what God put on this earth for us to thrive in these situations and communities and Dunbar's number, which is another topic. But let's say we just live somewhere and we don't have social media or mainstream media. Let's just say we don't have it. And our families are kind of like multi-generational. Maybe we either live with you or next to you. We have friends down the road. We have our sisters and our, we're helping with our nieces and nephews and we have all these things. If that was your life, what would you do? Because some people are like, well, I can't do this, I can't do this. And it's like, well, what if you had to? I mean, we're just really dang comfy. So like you talk about atomic habits, I like the book Comfort Crisis as well, because once you create a creature comfort, you ain't going back. I mean, It's like my heated steering wheel. I mean, like I can joke that my electric, it's not electric, but like electronic super smart car is like drives me crazy, but I can't go back because I got a heated steering wheel and heads up display. And I got a heated garage now, like I'm not moving.
Yep.
So we have these comforts that we add on and then it's like, well, I can't do that. And it's like, well, what if you had to? So when we're in the wild and it's like, first of all, for most of us, where are you getting these coffee beans? I mean, people come to me, they're like, I drink coconut water to be hydrated. I'm like, where'd you get the coconuts? Yeah. I mean, a lot of this, it just wouldn't have happened even 100 years ago. We didn't have the capacity to be able to travel over the world or have such instant access to things that aren't in our environment. Mm-hmm. And so we're so far removed from that, but the conditioning is so strong of like, but it's here for you now and it's convenient and like, here you go, live your best life here. Life is short, here we go. Like, I mean, you can look at it both ways and say, well, what do you want to accomplish and who do you want to be? And do we need to treat our bodies with more respect than that? And what does that look like for the individual, right? Yep. I've heard you talk about energy sovereignty. Will you explain what that means and how it's different from simply having energy?
Sure. We've been given the ability to create our own energy. And that's when you get up in the morning, best thing to do is go and look at the sun or stand in the sun if you can. If you have a window that faces the east, you just let it shine on your face. Okay, do a little breathing work, a little breath work. Maybe you do a couple stretches. If you can take a short 5-minute walk, especially outside if you can, if the weather's appropriate. I would say grounding with your shoes off would be the best, but that's beside the point. So you have now set up your body for a great day, especially if you've had lemon water or something like that where you're hydrating yourself. Be careful what you drink. Okay, make sure your water's clean. If you can get it out of a well or spring water, that's the best because there's no additives, and then you have that. But so that's your natural energy. And the more you work at it and the more exercises you do to build that up, your cells, which you're not aware of, but your cells are going to just be fabulous. Okay, they're going to love you because they're hydrated, they're active, and there's no drug, no artificial stimulant, right? So when you look at having energy and using a drug like caffeine, it's artificial. And the effects are real. And I will never tell you that there's not a time. I mean, I rarely drink caffeine. My biggest time is when I drive long distance because I don't want to fall asleep, okay?
And it works for you because you don't overdo it on a regular basis.
Right. So, so we drive to Florida a couple times a year. So I drive sometimes 10 to 12 hours in a day, and I get tired, okay? So that first night when I drive and we stop in a hotel, I sometimes will lay there for 2 to 4 hours before I'll go to sleep. And I realize I'm tired. Mm-hmm. Doesn't matter because my body, because it's been controlled by an outside substance, says you're not tired, even though I am tired. So as example of energy, creating your own energy would be something that Alex does and many, many people. They do pre-workout drinks. And, I don't know if you caught that. And I'm not picking on you.
No, I know.
Okay. But here's a thought. Now, I walk in the morning and I don't go to the gym. I never have. And I may or may not ever will. But the question is this. Ask yourself. You're taking a stimulant so that you can have better PRs. Yeah. Or QRs. Okay.
Dad just learned what a PR was about a month ago. It was great. Great conversation.
Right. So personal record, okay, just so we got that down. Okay. Because we all want to lift more or we want to have
You want to
more.
enhance your performance.
Yeah, correct. But it's not real.
No, it's gym culture.
And so, and you, what is the hardest thing for every one of us is humility.
Yeah.
And to sit in that gym and say, I don't need that to do a new PR. I'm going to do this on my own. 1 in 100, 1 in 200, maybe don't do it, right? I mean, is that your experience? Is everybody taking a pre-workout kind of thing?
There's clusters, I would say. So if you hang out with 4 people who do it, you're going to do it.
Right. Yeah.
And if you go to the gym by yourself and do whatever, like, I mean, I've gone through seasons of it, and if I do anything now, there's electrolytes and sometimes maybe 75 grams of caffeine in a pre-workout, which is not, I mean, some of them are, man,
yeah, it could be
300.
hundreds, right?
Yeah.
So you have to think about this, because this is artificial energy. And you've got a great workout. And now realize it's a diuretic, and you're taking it before you're going to sweat. And if you don't replace that with good energy, okay, electrolytes, salt, minerals, you're depleted the rest of the day. You have an artificial high for a while. There's no doubt. And it's a dandy probably.
And a good pump.
Yeah, right. So, that would be gym talk. So you have to say to yourself, is this how I choose to live my life? Because where does all this go to? It goes to the adrenal glands. That's probably the most important thing.
Well, and I want to go back to your story real quick about, just the circadian rhythm, the sun, the morning sun, the evening sun, the fresh air in the morning, and we all somewhere deep down know it, but what is the hardcore resistance to thinking that could make a huge difference? Because you just think, well, it can't make enough of a difference to get me to change my routines because I have to get kits ready and I have to do all these things and I don't have time to take 5 minutes to myself, or I want to see what's up on my phone because I'm addicted to that connection too. I'm checking my phone before I even get my coffee, right? And so if there's a resistance to something to that, like, I just think we got to lean into that a little bit.
Right.
Because it's so easy to skip over that story and be like, I don't need that. Sun shines, I'm out there at some point, whatever, but it really, it makes a huge difference to our bodies. Our bodies weren't made to be like this. We're supposed to be about 80% human beings and only about 20% human doings. And we're running around like human doings all the time. All the time. And you think of when you strip some things back, I mean, some of the happiest times I've had in my life was when I had nothing. Like I moved to Hawaii and none of my stuff caught up to me. I didn't even have a car. I had a bike. I only could get enough groceries what fit in my backpack. I had a gecko living in my kitchen sink and it was okay because I didn't have any dishes. And I mean, I was so at peace and I was working on myself and I was like, man, I crave that. And so, but it's like you tell a story about how you could wake up in the morning and give yourself energy. And it's like, well, but it's not quick enough and it's not fast enough and it's not everything. That's literally the same thing as being like, oh, well, I need the drug over the supplement. It's like, I mean, I think that comparing caffeine in that instance to the thing that's just like, man, if you're dependent on this thing and you're not believing in the natural, like where are your belief systems at? And do we need to check in with ourselves on this?
Here's a good example of creating a habit in the morning. I have found that I'm very productive in the morning. So I set my alarm clock for 6:10 and my clock is 7 minutes fast. So it's actually about 6 o'clock because that's what time I want to get up. And when I do that, when I set my alarm clock, and I did a little experiment. So I've been doing this for 2 weeks. The alarm has never woke me up. I have woken up anywhere between 6:01 and 6:09. This morning, I woke up at 6:09. My arm was asleep. I had to get over there quick so it wouldn't wake Brenda up, and I turned it off. But you realize that my circadian rhythm is good because my body is waking up on its own. It's healthy. And my cortisol is kicking in because I've now subconsciously programmed myself to know what time I should get up. If I don't set that alarm, there's days when I could conceivably sleep until 6:45 or 7 o'clock. And so I've reset. Now, if you're on caffeine, if you're drinking any kind of caffeine regularly, your alarm clock is probably going to wake you up because you're exhausted. Let's face it,
And then you blame it on other things.
Yeah,
right. We're blaming it on schedules and work and life and everything, and not maybe we can handle some of those things a little bit better than we think we can.
Because I go back to the anecdotal story of the influencer, and the fact is that how he did after he quit caffeine, and he slept the best nights of his life. And what does that do then? It sets you up for a great day. It really does. So if there's one major benefit to all of this, it's your sleep.
Yeah.
Okay. Now there's all kinds of other things. Okay.
Yeah.
But that, because your sleep is the natural healer.
Yeah. So I mean, even if someone, because I definitely think that sleep is also a bio-individual experience. And so, I think women do need more sleep than men just from the hormone production standpoint. But it's still a different situation for everybody. And so even if whether you're sleeping 6 hours or 9 hours, if that sleep is more restorative because you don't have caffeine, you're going to be a better person.
Yep.
Yeah. So I go through, in summer, I naturally need less sleep. But I'm paying attention. I'm pretty in tune. Even though I do have been consuming caffeine, like I'm still in tune in enough ways to know that in summer, it's really easy for me to get up at 5 o'clock in summer.
Yep.
Not so easy in December, and that's okay. Honor that too. Sleep a little bit more in the winter.
Yep.
But yeah, you got to figure out, if you don't have those awarenesses, what are some of the things that are blocking them? And I mean, a huge one is caffeine.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. Let's see. Gosh, these questions are so good too. We're going to skip down to the bottom.
Yeah.
Because this is just interesting, and people know, like, I get my entrepreneurial spirit from you and lifelong entrepreneurs, you and Brenda, and stepping into that role myself. So over the past 40 years of running businesses, how did caffeine culture show up in that journey? And how do you look at it and coach people differently now? And honoring that we've done everything both ways,
Yes.
right? Like we didn't used to live natural until we kind of had Mac, and then Brenda had her story. Like we've lived it both ways. Like we were both talking about quitting smoking. We've both had periods where we drank more. We've both had periods where we ate bad. We both had periods where we watched the news.
Yeah.
And now we don't do those things, but it's we can recognize it, I think, a little better because we lived it that way.
Right.
So yeah, just share a little bit about that.
So beginning part of my journey was in the restaurant business. And I saw such abuse of bodily abuse by my employees in the restaurant business. Okay. Probably the majority of them smoked. And, the funniest thing of that whole experience, 25 to 30 years of doing this, was people would look at me and they would say, employees would look at me and say, I'm going to try to quit smoking. And I would look at them, I said, don't bother. And they'd look at me like, what are you talking about? Well, you either quit smoking or you don't quit smoking. If you try to quit smoking, you're going to fail. Because trying to do something, it's intentional. The mindset girl will tell you this all day. If you don't have the intention to quit, you're not going to quit. So trying, because in your mind,
you're setting yourself up for failure
absolutely,
too, which is
because
really
you're
sad.
trying to quit, but you're not going to quit. Because trying it defeats that purpose.
And I wonder if it's still like that. I mean, when I worked in restaurants too, like you only got a break if you smoked. It was a smoke break.
Right.
If you didn't smoke, you didn't get a break.
No, right.
Literally.
So what I found in that is that they abused caffeine, or tobacco in particular, but caffeine as well. Okay, and even at that time, and that was 10 or 15 years ago, energy drinks were already here. And how many people walked into their shift with a can of Red Bull or Monster in their hand, right? Because they needed to get through their shift. And then during their shift, they're drinking iced tea or coffee or soda. Coca-Cola, whatever the case may be, because they needed to get through. Now realize if they're working 4 to 10 shift and they're drinking caffeine till 10 o'clock, at some point they're going to go to sleep. So don't misunderstand me.
Right.
But their sleep is never going to be good.
And even that, you're literally out of balance with your circadian rhythm just working that shift, which is not that people can control it. I mean, we've had a lot of people over the years, like shift work, police officers, where like they have to work second, third shift, but you have to then honor the fact that you are in conflict with your own circadian rhythm. So instead of making the issue worse, you got to try to compensate to make it better.
Yep, right. So as I look at what that past life of mine was, when I would coach someone, I would say, okay, we need to replace that habit, not just the habits, but the actual physical thing. So the last thing in the world I want to try to tell you is you're not going to drink anything in the morning. Okay, you need to, and that's going to be not impossible to break, but close. So what you do is you drink herbal tea with no caffeine. That's an example. That's just one example. Okay, even warm or hot water with lemon in it. Okay, because it gives us some flavor. Okay, but but what happens is subconsciously you have that warm mug in your hand.
Yeah. I'd love to plug Coco Ringa here because,
Yeah, right.
you know, we have a superfood hot chocolate, and a lot of people have used that to get off of their coffee habit.
Right.
Because it's a hot chocolate that has no caffeine, it has no dairy, it's made of superfoods. It balances your blood sugar.
Yep.
You can throw a scoop of collagen in it, and it is that warm, and it's a treat because it's sweeter than coffee.
Yep.
Yeah, it's at DIYNH.com.
You want to say that one more time?
DIY, like do it yourself, NH, natural health, DIYNH.com. That's our Symmetry website. And I looked up the other day, and Coco Ringa, because we've promoted it as this substitute, is now in our top selling products, top 10.
Yeah.
Out of, 400 or 500 things that we
Right.
have here. Top 10.
Yeah.
Because, and that's really powerful.
Yeah.
And you do need something that that feels, because it's not punishment, right?
Right.
Quitting caffeine or doing something that's good for you, you shouldn't be doing it out of punishment. Like, oh my gosh, they're talking to me. They're talking about me right now, right? Yeah. No, it's not coming from a place of judgment. This is an opportunity to honor your body and do what's good for it. And so, is it going to be uncomfortable? Yes. Is it going to be hard? Yes. But does it have to be absolutely blaringly miserable every day? No.
I'm going to tell you an anecdotal story which happened about 45 minutes ago. We walked into this room to record this, and there was a lady here. I'm not picking on her, but I told her what we were going to do, and she literally took her coffee cup and she set it down. She said, "You don't want to see this, do you?" And I looked at her and I said, "I'm not here to judge you."
Yeah.
I said, none of this is ever about judgment, because you have to deal with this. It's a personal thing.
If you're ready for it.
Yep.
Right?
If you're ready.
It's just like the food conversation.
Right. Yep. So when we talk about this, from today till the day I stop doing this, which is going to be many, many years from now, I'm not judging you, because you're human. You have a self-sabotage tool shed, which you're going to go to once in a while. And so how do we deal with this? So we're going to wrap this up with this. What do we do? What do we work with you for? And why would you use Release the Coffee Cups program? Because we will help you reprogram your subconscious. Because that's all it is. Once you accomplish this, you will go farther and farther away from falling off the wagon, as a term in...
It's also about more than caffeine.
Yeah, right, yeah.
Yeah.
So, there's a reason why AA is there, and people go to meetings for years and possibly
you don't
for
graduate.
life. You don't graduate, right?
I don't know. I don't
right.
know, honestly.
Neither do I.
Yeah.
But I know people that have been in it for years.
Yeah.
Because without it, they can't do it. They go back. They fall off the wagon. So what we provide is in the beginning, obviously we have an 8-week course, and there's a reason for that. Is that generally speaking, 60 days, if you quit caffeine relatively early in the program, within 60 days, many of your hormones are going to be balanced. Mm-hmm. Okay, maybe not 100%, especially for women, because this has more impact on women, and obviously each individual woman is different. To take it a step farther. Mm-hmm. But what we do is we set you up for success. You also have the ability to check in later on if you choose in the program. But so what happens is that at the end of those 60 days, okay, the physical thing ended in 5 to 10 days, or 12 days maybe, you're off physically. But those habits you created over your lifetime, they're not going away in 10 days or 20 days. And sometimes they take more than 30 days, more than 60 days. Mm-hmm. So we give you the tools that, one of the questions that she could ask me right now is, what do you say to somebody that is has quit caffeine, let's say for 45 days, and they say, what should I do because I really need a cup of coffee today? Well, the first thing you do is you ask yourself why. You go back into your notes, and in one of the journals we have, is why did I have that? Why did I have coffee at this time? Okay, Because realize a lot of it's timing. It's with breakfast, it's with break, it's with lunch, it's with an afternoon
Because
crash.
you're just trying to get yourself through the day.
Correct. So you say to yourself, why do I want coffee right now for this reason? You go back and you look at your journals, okay? And then you say to yourself, okay, here's my list of things that I do, because you've created this. This is a personal list of how I quit. And what do I do when I have this urge? Because one of the things, the first thing to do, and if you're just thinking about quitting, the best advice I can give you is to do a 3-day caffeine journal. And this is between you and yourself. Okay. One of my favorite self-sabotage images is a lady looking in the mirror. Because this is about you versus you. Mm-hmm. This is no one else. This isn't me. This isn't Alex. It's about you. So it's like when you go to the doctor and you don't tell them everything. How can they help you? Okay. So when you do this caffeine journal, what you do is you actually don't cheat. Because you're only cheating yourself. You know in here you're cheating. So when you have that cup of coffee and you figure out, a normal cup is 75 milligrams, maybe 100 milligrams.
And if you find yourself, I think there's a check-in process there. If you're ashamed to write it down, let's check in with that, because the worst thing you can put in your mouth is guilt and shame, even worse than caffeine or junk food. The worst thing you can eat or drink is guilt and shame. So let's just strip that right back and say there is zero judgment. I mean, we've said that multiple times, but there needs to be zero judgment from yourself to yourself.
Yeah, right. So
everyone starts where they stand.
So do that 3-day journal. There's these recommendations, and I use air quotes here because each person's different, right? Just like Alex mentioned before, and particularly women have more of an effect. Caffeine has more of an effect on women than men because of the hormonal issues. There are just more hormones involved with the women with the caffeine and the adrenals. So if you drink 200 milligrams of caffeine a day, you're borderline, I'll take that back. You're addicted if you're doing it every day. Okay, you're addicted. Because if you stop, you're going to get the headaches. They actually say that 400 milligrams is okay. Well, you're buzzed half the day then, and you're not sleeping at night. So you just want to be aware of that. Mm-hmm. So it is important to know so take a look and say, and so you got to figure out what's your normal cup of coffee. And what's ironic is that, a cup of coffee used to be 6 ounces. Then it went to 8 ounces. Then it went to 16 ounces. You can buy a big one at Starbucks for probably 20 ounces. Okay, that 20-ounce cup of coffee at Starbucks could possibly have 200 to 300 milligrams of coffee in it.
They do have shockingly high amounts of caffeine.
So what happens is that your 6-ounce cup and your 12-ounce cup, when you say I have a cup of coffee, how much is in there? So you got to figure that out. And if you go to Starbucks, it's all listed. They have it all, right? Yep. And so journal it. And then say to yourself, is this what's right for me?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then I think just as with anything with self-sabotage or life, there's the all or nothing approach, which maybe I attract all or nothing people because I am all or nothing person.
Yeah.
So retraining myself to look at the scale of good, better, best has been really powerful. And good, better, best is like just these standards for yourself. And so all or nothing says, well, I have to be the best all the time, otherwise it's not even worth trying. Yeah. But there are good options, there are better options, and there are best options. And if you go on the internet, everybody also believes that there's only one option, and it's always the best, and it's always what they think.
Right.
And there is a spectrum here for everybody all the time. And there is tolerance, although you gotta draw your own lines in the sand. But we're just encouraging people to realize probably time to draw some lines.
Yep.
If we want to really embrace our own vitality and wellness and honor our health journey.
Yeah. So this isn't going to be the last podcast we do on this because we've hit about that much of what we want to talk about.
4 questions out of
a dozen. But so I'm gonna wrap up my part and then Alex can wrap up her part because we're at an hour now, and if you stayed with me, congratulations. So.
You can come to dinner on Tuesday.
That's right.
Just kidding, because that's mine.
What would I tell you? Why am I here? One, I'm here not to judge you. Okay, that is the biggest thing. I'm here to educate you and support you. Okay, because this is not an easy thing. Okay, breaking the subconscious habits is way harder than just physically quitting caffeine. And what we do in our program is we help you restructure your life. In other words, your habits, the daily activities of your life are no longer going to be centered around caffeine. And if you stop, you will realize how much your life has revolved around caffeine.
Thank you so much. Thanks for this. Thanks for the nudge to do the podcasting, because this is fun and this is a way for people to get to know us too. Our journey into natural health and everything has been, we don't tote it. We go all the way in. But we also have a lot of fun. And we've created a lot of things in our lives that are the healthier version, some that are perfect, some that are just a step on the way. And we're at peace with all of that, and we like it, and we feel good about the choices that we're making because we understand them. And so I think that's the biggest thing that we want for people is to never say, oh man, I wish I wasn't doing that to myself. Okay, well that vibration right there is something that we want to just check in with and say, let's come from a place of self-love, right? And Soulset Rising is all about self-love and self-respect. You look up to people that you love and respect. And so the best thing we can do is become someone that we love and respect. We love ourselves, we respect ourselves, we love our choices, we respect our choices. Even when they're not always perfect, we can love ourselves. So one of my favorite sayings is love and truth activate the healing process. And the love side is the holding the space for the grace that we need to get through these. And the truth is the fact that it's going to be uncomfortable sometimes and that we have to do it anyways. And so on the love and truth spectrum, if one is not working, we increase the other. And that's how we constantly approach that with clients and with our own selves and our own family and our own lives. And everyone, I think, knows that I'm not a purist, which I think is so for people who are, there are other coaches who are a little more hand-holding, a little more strict, I'll say, on things. And that's not necessarily us, but to me, if you're not healthy enough to handle certain things, then how healthy really are you? And so this is coming from a place of curiosity and interest, and self-sabotage is a topic that we have come to love. So follow along. This is going to be a really fun journey.
It is. And we're going to do this again. So thank you so much for doing this one. And you will see us again on Symmetry Natural Health Live.